apologize for the confusion, but I guess in my mind it made sense. But what you just said, as far as Republicans speaking, walking or talking the talk, but not necessarily walking the walk once they're in office, I'm also seeing that the correlation between the two things I brought up is that a lot of the churches are watering down the message in fear of offending someone, in fear of political correctness, and so
their tax status.
Yes.
Whatever. So we've got that happening in the political arena, in the religious arena, and the watering down of the message, or and actually watering down what's happening in action as opposed to what sounds good in speech.
Absolutely.
Is an issue.
And you are right, without question. It's the faith component is very scary for many in politics, both sides, because it's just the other night we had a candidates forum in Medina County in front of the Medina County Republican Party, and I don't know how many of the Republican leaders in the audience stood up and said that those weren't the most important issues. We needed to be talking about economics and so on, because we had a lot of questions that night at the beginning about the life issue and those types of things. And then some of the leaders started saying, oh, we need to stop focusing on this and focus on some of these other things. And quite honestly, if you do believe, and this is a free country, a great free country where you don't have to worship anywhere or anytime, but your government doesn't have the right to tell you you can't.
That's right.
And I will tell you, for those of us who do believe, I'm going to just flat out tell you, we've reversed it. I do believe in the Creator that the founders referred to, gave us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe that that the Scriptures, the book stopped, the story continues. The same God who was in charge in the Old Testament, who obviously weighed in on the affairs of men and nations, He's still in control. What is the Scripture? I, the Lord, do not change. Same yesterday, today, and forever. So He's still up there, still paying attention. History would prove, if you believe that's what the Old Testament is, real history, then you will see that nations that seeked Him and tried to live by His ways and His principles, they were blessed, became some of the most powerful and prosperous in the world. But the moment they became self-sufficient and thought they could do it now without any blessing from above, they started to wander, and what happened? Well, shield of protection was lifted, armies came in and invaded, people flooded into the country, watered down the culture. Not only that, the wealth, it was gone, the fields dried up. They didn't measure it with stock markets back then. They measured it with barns filled to the top, streams and fields full of crops. I will just make this observation, and this may terrify some of the viewers, but I will tell you what.
Are you saying they didn't have cows, goats, and chickens?
So I guess they did, didn't they? But they didn't have anything to eat. So here's the deal. This is my observation. In the Old Testament, America's being treated very similar to the way Israel was treated. When they went the wrong direction and they started to say there's no place for a God above in our society, we can do it on our own, we don't need to follow His ways, their wealth disappeared. The thing is, their wealth was measured by different things than what it's measured by today. Like I said, the crops disappeared, drought came, the animals died, the livestock went away. That's how they measured their wealth, when they didn't get the matters of the heart right. Here we are in America today, and as we decide that there's no place for God in any of our discussions, there's no prayer for schools, we don't need to follow His principles of staying out of debt, we certainly don't need to have any regard to His definition of marriage, and we start slowly writing laws that say, now, God may say this, but America says this. Why would we expect great prosperity to be upon our shores? And perhaps the reason why we see our wealth, we don't measure it by barns that are empty or crops that aren't doing so well this year. I guess some farmers do. What do we measure it by? A stock market portfolio that slips just like that in a day. Retirement savings that through no fault of your own, one day the market reacts and your wealth is gone. Your home value plummets. Isn't it interesting what has taken place these last few years? And it was through no fault of Americans. In an instant, markets slipped and the wealth disappeared. Jobs are going away now, more and more men and women out of work. Could we not be living with the same consequences that they lived with back in Scripture? This is the modern version. We don't measure it by the same terms or speak of it in the same way. I think that's where we're at, quite honestly, as a people. And that's what's unfortunate. The God that gave us our wealth and our prosperity and blessed us as a people is also a God that tells us, you get the matters of the heart right. You get the social issues right. You get all that taken care of, and I'll pour out my blessing on you like nothing you've ever imagined. And he proved it. He did it. The founders came here and they said, we're going to try to set this up on your truth. We're going to try to do right whenever we possibly can. They sinned still. They still made mistakes. They still didn't always do the right thing with slavery and so on. But look how fast our wealth and prosperity grew. Now we find ourselves in a situation where we're saying the social issues, they don't matter. Those matters of the heart, values, they don't matter. It's up to the individual. What matters is we all have health insurance, we all have a job, and we have good trade policies. Just the opposite of what he told us. We're worrying about our money more than we are our hearts. And the unfortunate thing is, the thing that's held America together for so long and made her a great nation is Americans' hearts were good and we're seeking to do right. I'll close with this.
We had some more questions,
okay.
actually.
All right.
This gentleman back here,
Yes.
our friend from Mansfield.
I was wondering, is there any kind of a tally of in our nation how many populations say we're Republican and how many say we're Democrats? And
I don't know what it is.
But I think there's more supposedly Democrats, registered Democrats.
I can answer that question as far as Ohio goes.
I'm at the country.
I don't know about the country, but I know Ohio, 13% registered Republican, 17% registered Democrat, 60% registered Independent.
Okay.
And the remaining 10% are your Green Party, your Constitution, your Libertarian Reform, etc.
Well, I've said to other.
I did just hear, no, I'm stepping on your words, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add that. Just the other night, though, I heard that 62% of Americans identify themselves as conservatives.
But see, I think I've said this to other Republican, I'm a member of the Republican Party there in Richland County too, people, I said, you know, our elected officials, when they get to Washington, think, you know, that they're the nice guy. They want to be nice, you know, and even a grouch doesn't want to do business with a grouch. But they want to be nice, you know, and they're willing to talk out the issues, but they don't stand up and fight with, and they, you know, they back down. They are the ones that compromise. Now, the Democrats are not really our enemy. There aren't any Democrats anymore. They're socialists. But anyway, most of the Democrats came over to the Republican Party under Reagan and recently. But we have not recognized who the real enemy of our nation is. Islam, for one, and the Soviets or the communist persuasion, and well, not Islam, but the communists and a lot of other world outviews or worldviews are the fruit of the teaching of evolution in our schools.
I'll tell you what, the thing is, the majority of Americans, I am still convinced, are still seeking truth. You don't hear about them on your nightly news, but I do believe it is the heartland of the country, the Midwest, and certainly there's other great people in other great states, but we're still, for the most part, trying to do what's right, trying to do the right, honest thing in our financial dealings, still seeking Him, still saying prayers before we go to bed at night, and that's why we continue to be a blessed nation. The thing is, though, all of those traditional principles and all of those traditional viewpoints and all of our traditional values are under constant attack. And they're constantly being scorned, and they're constantly the government's trying to make them illegal, and so on, or at least our practice of them, and that's where we're starting to slip. But there's still a core out there, and perhaps one of the best parts about the Tea Party movement is they're starting to take action. They're starting to show up and get involved. And you're going to have to do so because it's going to take a lot of warriors out there on the battlefield to rid our nation of those that have achieved prominent roles that can sway the course of our country.